Before we dive into this story, let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And now, welcome to True Echo, where real strength echoes louder than judgment. What you're about to hear is more than a story. It's a reckoning. A moment that shattered illusions, reversed power, and reminded everyone that dignity wears no label. Let's begin. The soft hum of jazz floated through Regal Attire's marble showroom, each note brushing across polished black floors and glass cases glittering with diamonds. In the quiet, conversations carried easily. Expensive perfume lingered in the air like old money, intentional and unmistakable. The door chimed softly. Evelyn Carter stepped inside. Tall. 55. Skin rich and radiant like polished mahogany. Her short curls, silver-threaded and unbothered by time, framed a face that wore no makeup but carried unshakable calm. She wore faded jeans, a plain gray sweater, and sneakers worn soft with time. A scuffed black tote hung from her shoulder. It didn't matter. Not to her. But it did to them. Behind the register, Melissa Grant noticed first. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Blonde, sharp-suited, and sharper-tongued, she surveyed Evelyn like a misplaced coat in a five-star restaurant. Two well-heeled women near the scarves looked up, then down again, lips twitching. One of them murmured, "Thrift stores down the block." Melissa didn't laugh. She didn't need to. Her smile, when she approached Evelyn, was all the mockery she needed. "Good afternoon," she said, syrupy sweet. "Are you looking for someone, or perhaps a different store?" Evelyn smiled back. Polite. Unbothered. "No. I'm exactly where I need to be." Melissa's smile froze. Her gaze dropped, faded denim, battered sneakers, a tote bag with a taped corner. She tilted her head as if trying to reframe the puzzle. "This boutique specializes in exclusive designer pieces," Melissa continued, voice carefully professional. "Our clientele usually expects a certain experience." Behind her, Jason Miller, a lean man in a trim suit, watched approvingly. He'd seen Melissa weed out the riffraff before. Sophie Diaz, the younger cashier, bit her lip, her eyes flicking between Melissa and Evelyn with growing unease. Evelyn glanced toward the evening gowns lining the wall behind glass. Soft silks. Shimmering fabrics. One caught her eye, a sleek black dress, elegant in its simplicity. "I'd like to try that one," she said. Melissa laughed. Not loudly. Just loud enough. "That dress is $4,000, she said, arching her brow. "Let's not misunderstand each other." "I didn't," Evelyn replied, cool as slate. The boutique quieted. Whispers swirled. Melissa gestured subtly toward the door. "If you'd like recommendations for something more suitable, I'm happy to help." Evelyn stayed rooted, voice low. "So, reality is judged by fabric and shoes now?" Melissa leaned in. "Reality is judged by knowing your place." And there it was. Evelyn's expression didn't flicker. But something inside her shifted. Not with anger. With memory. With purpose. She studied Melissa's practiced poise. The false smiles. The unearned superiority. She had seen it before. She had conquered it before. But she had never let it go unchallenged. She looked again at the dress. At the glass. At the sneers hiding behind champagne flutes. Then she turned and walked out. But she wasn't leaving. She was just beginning. Outside, the cool Seattle breeze kissed Evelyn's face, but she hardly felt it. Her hands were steady as she pulled her phone from the tote, her mind already calculating the steps ahead. She dialed the number by heart. "David," she said calmly, "I need you to bring the executive team to Regal Attire." 15 minutes. Her assistant's response was immediate. "Understood." The call ended. Evelyn didn't need to explain. David knew the tone. Knew when to act. Back inside the boutique, Melissa stood by the counter, recounting the incident with flair. "It's not about being cruel," she said, smirking. "It's about maintaining standards. Can you imagine if we let every window shopper try on couture?" Linda Wallace, still clutching her designer handbag, chuckled from the scarf display. "You handled it perfectly, Melissa." Jason gave a low laugh. Another crisis averted. Only Sophie Diaz didn't laugh. Her eyes stayed on the door. Her fingers trembled slightly as she organized the jewelry case. She'd seen something different in that woman. Something quiet. Powerful. Melissa raised a glass of sparkling water, as if to toast herself. "This boutique represents a brand. A legacy. Some people, well, they just don't belong in it." At that exact moment, Marcus Lee, the security guard, noticed the black SUVs rolling to a smooth stop outside. The vehicles weren't flashy. Just sleek. Business. Serious. He straightened. Melissa, meanwhile, leaned closer to Linda. Honestly, she was about to embarrass herself. It was a mercy. Linda grinned, sipping her drink. I almost felt sorry for her. The door chimed again. David Ramsey walked in first, sharp suit, darker eyes. Then the rest of the team followed, legal advisors, PR heads, heads of HR, and behind them, calmly stepping into the boutique once more, Evelyn Carter. The laughter died instantly. Melissa blinked. Confused. Then forced a bright smile. "Oh. I didn't know we had corporate visiting today. Is this a surprise inspection?" She extended her hand toward David. He didn't take it. Instead, he stepped aside. "Miss Grant," he said, voice cold, "meet your employer. Evelyn Carter, CEO of Regal Attire." Silence collapsed across the boutique like a fallen chandelier. Melissa's hand dropped. Her smile wilted. Jason's eyes widened, jaw going slack. Linda choked on her drink. Sophie gasped softly, a hand to her chest. Evelyn stepped forward, unhurried, her presence commanding in a way no designer label could teach. She stood at the center of the boutique, the same boutique where they had all judged her for the wrong reasons. Evelyn's voice was quiet, but it carried through the room with unmistakable authority. "Bunny," she said, using the condescending nickname Melissa had once laughed behind closed doors, "how quickly the standards change when the truth walks in." Jason took a step back, looking desperately between Melissa and David. Linda fumbled with her bag. Sophie couldn't look away, her cheeks flushed with guilt. Evelyn turned to Melissa. "I built this brand," she said, her words clean and cold. "Not for exclusion. Not for cruelty. But for excellence. For dignity." Melissa opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. David pulled out Evelyn's phone, holding it up. "We have the footage. Every word. Every sneer. Every insult hidden behind fake politeness." Evelyn nodded once. "I was measured the moment I walked in. Judged by clothes, by skin, by assumptions. But let me be clear. This isn't about me. It's about a culture. And that culture ends today." David motioned to security. One stepped forward and unclipped Melissa's name badge from her blazer. "Effective immediately, you're terminated," David said. "You are no longer welcome at any Regal Attire location. Ever." Melissa's face drained of color. "Wait, no, this is a misunderstanding. I didn't know." Evelyn's eyes didn't soften. "You didn't care to know." Linda tried to chime in. "Miss Carter, I'm a longtime client." "Surely." Evelyn's gaze cut to her. "You encouraged it," she said evenly. "You cheered it on. And I will not have bigotry masquerading as loyalty." She turned to the room. "To Jason, your position is suspended." Mandatory training begins next week. You'll rebuild your credibility, if you can. To Sophie, you saw it. You stayed quiet. But you'll get another chance. Learn from it. Tears shimmered in Sophie's eyes as she nodded. And then Evelyn turned to the rest, customers, staff, those who had laughed, sneered, judged. If luxury to you means exclusion, this isn't your store, she said. But if you believe respect is the true currency of excellence, you're welcome here. Not a single voice challenged her. Because Evelyn Carter had walked in wearing jeans. But she walked out having reset the entire definition of power. And she wasn't finished yet. The mood inside regal attire had turned from smug to suffocating. The laughter had vanished. The proud elegance that once flowed through the boutique like perfume had soured, leaving behind the acrid stench of exposed arrogance. Evelyn didn't rush. She took in the room with that same calm she had entered with. But now, every step she took echoed with purpose. The boutique that had once seemed too pristine for her presence now felt too small for her authority. Melissa stood frozen near the center display. Without her name tag, without the control she once wielded like a weapon, she looked smaller. Weaker. And suddenly so very unsure of her place. I gave this chain 10 years of my life, she stammered, her voice brittle with panic. I built this store. I trained this team. Evelyn looked at her, long and hard. And in 10 minutes, she said, you showed me everything that's broken beneath the surface. Jason lowered his head, his cheeks burning. Linda backed toward the exit like a guilty child caught red-handed. Sophie wiped her eyes, lips pressed tight. David stepped forward again. Corporate policy will be restructured immediately. Evelyn has instructed full retraining for all management staff chain-wide. Anti-bias compliance. Accountability workshops. Random surveillance reviews. Evelyn cut in gently, not to punish, though some deserve it, but to remind them what this company was built on. Not just polish and price tags. Her voice softened, but the steel was still there. I started this brand because I wanted to create spaces where every woman, every person, could feel powerful, regardless of how they walked in. I didn't spend decades building that just to see it become another mirror for society's ugliest habits. Outside, the SUVs remained idling, the executives waiting by the door. But Evelyn didn't move yet. She walked slowly past the displays. Dresses she had personally approved. Handbags she'd helped design. Ads on the walls featuring models she'd fought to make inclusive. And all of it had been weaponized by people like Melissa. Used to separate, to elevate, to shame. She stopped at the very same glass case where the black dress still hung. Open it, she said. Sophie, her hands trembling, rushed forward and unlocked the display. Evelyn stepped forward, ran a hand along the smooth silk. Then she turned to the small crowd still lingering inside the boutique. This dress, she said, was made in collaboration with a Haitian designer whose mother worked 2 jobs to buy her first sewing machine. She looked straight at Linda. This brand was never built for exclusion. It was built for legacy. For resilience. For people who don't have to wear their worth on their wrist. She turned to Sophie. Find my size. Sophie nodded, rushing off to retrieve it. Evelyn stepped behind a fitting curtain, and the room, silent and still, remained suspended in uncomfortable anticipation. When she emerged minutes later, the boutique gasped. Evelyn stood tall in the black silk, its understated design now regal on her frame. She didn't need accessories. She didn't need a price tag to make her shine. She already did. Jason let out a small breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. Sophie smiled through her tears. Even Marcus, the ever-stoic security guard, gave the faintest respectful nod. Melissa, now visibly shaking, whispered, "You really are her." Evelyn walked right past her. Not a glance. Not a word. She turned to David. Close the store for the rest of the day. Let them sit with this. Let them remember. David nodded, already calling in the regional team to handle the closure. Evelyn walked to the front entrance, the boutique behind her now a frozen scene of shattered pride and silent reckoning. She paused once, her hand on the door, and looked over her shoulder. Dignity, she said clearly, isn't something you recognize by clothes. It's something you reveal in how you treat others. With that, she stepped out into the sunlight. Outside the boutique, the city moved on, cars passed, pedestrians bustled, phones rang, but inside regal attire, time had stopped. The echo of Evelyn Carter's final words lingered in the still air like a gavel's final strike in a courtroom. It wasn't just embarrassment that coated the boutique like dust now, it was exposure. Melissa Grant slumped onto a velvet stool near the fitting area. Her breathing was shallow. The silence from her former staff, the executives, and her once loyal customers screamed louder than any outburst could have. Her fall from grace had been public, swift, and irreversible. Jason stood stiffly behind the counter, his face blank. For the first time, he couldn't hide behind his practiced smirk. Every sneer, every approving glance he'd given Melissa hours ago now felt like a stain on his character, and worse, on his future. Sophie was the only one moving. She quietly locked up the fitting rooms, folded scarves back into their silk-lined boxes, and wiped down the glass counters with methodical care. There was something different in her eyes now. No longer nervous. No longer timid. She'd seen what power looked like when it walked in without fanfare. Meanwhile, Evelyn stepped into the back seat of her sedan parked between two luxury SUVs. David joined her inside, passing her a tablet with incoming updates from the board and the PR team. "We've got media coverage flagged already," he said. "No leaks yet, but we're bracing." "Let them leak," Evelyn said, scrolling calmly through the internal footage that had already been compiled and backed up in the cloud. "The public should know the truth. That a brand isn't a fortress for the elite, it's a reflection of who we are inside." David glanced at her. "This will cost us. That store was one of our top performers. Some investors may try to spin this as a liability." Evelyn didn't flinch. "Then they'll get a choice," she said. "Support our values, or walk away." Her fingers tapped the screen as she reviewed new diversity policy proposals drafted just minutes after her call. This wasn't going to be a PR patch job. It was going to be a culture shift. From every retail floor to every executive boardroom. Back at the boutique, Melissa had finally risen. Still in shock, she moved toward Sophie, who was sorting receipts behind the counter. "You knew who she was," Melissa whispered, a mix of resentment and disbelief warping her voice. Sophie looked up. Her expression was no longer afraid, it was resolute. "No," she replied, her voice soft but clear. "But I knew how we were treating her was wrong." Melissa's face tightened, as if stung by the truth. "I gave you this job," she hissed. "And I almost lost my integrity trying to keep it," Sophie responded, setting down the receipt pad. At the door, Marcus, the security guard, finally spoke. "I saw her name on a shareholder memo last year," he said simply. "I didn't say anything because I didn't think she needed me to. She walked in like she could handle herself." Melissa stared at him. "You let me go through all that without stopping me?" "No," Marcus replied, his arms folding over his chest. "You let yourself go through it. I just watched." Jason leaned forward now, his voice low and hoarse. "This is going to blow up, isn't it?" Sophie didn't answer. She didn't have to. The boutique felt like a match had already been dropped. The world just hadn't caught the flame yet. Meanwhile, across the city, Evelyn sat at a long glass conference table inside Regal Attire's headquarters. The walls were lined with awards, but she wasn't looking at those. She was speaking directly to the entire regional management team, live. "Let me be clear," she began, her voice strong but calm, "what happened today isn't an isolated incident. It's a symptom. And symptoms come from something deeper. The managers on the screen, some visibly shaken, others defensive, listened in silence. This brand began in my mother's garage, Evelyn said. With scraps of fabric and the belief that you didn't need money to deserve respect. You just needed to carry yourself with dignity, and give it to others. She paused, letting the weight of her words land. From today forward, your job isn't to guard doors. It's to open them. Not to size up shoes, but to measure character. We will retrain, we will rebuild, and we will re-earn the trust that was broken today. One of the district leads leaned into the camera. Miss Carter, if I may ask, what happens to the store in Seattle? Evelyn gave a small smile. It's closed. For now. But not gone. She looked down at a printed statement in front of her. It was already drafted, press ready. We'll be reopening it in a week, she said, under a new name, E. Carter Boutique. It will be a flagship for what we stand for, true elegance, built on integrity. A quiet applause rippled through the meeting. But Evelyn wasn't moved by flattery. She was moved by accountability. We're not fixing a brand, she said finally. We're fixing a message. And across the city, behind closed doors and glass walls, everyone began to listen. Back at Regal Attire's now darkened storefront, a quiet unease still hung in the air. The lights had been dimmed. The "closed for corporate training" sign had been hung on the door. Inside, silence reigned. Melissa sat alone in the now empty fitting lounge, the same place she had once held impromptu meetings, scolded employees for misaligned displays, and offered champagne to her favorite clients. It had only been hours, but it felt like another lifetime. She still wore her crisp navy blazer, but it no longer felt like armor, it felt like costume jewelry at a black tie gala. Cheap. Pretend. Her thoughts spun. She thought about the moment Evelyn had walked in. How her instincts had kicked in, not to welcome, but to categorize. Evaluate. Reject. All wrapped in a ribbon of politeness. It was how she'd been taught. How the industry worked, she believed. But no one ever told her what it felt like when that smile became a noose around your own career. Out front, Jason hadn't moved from the counter. He leaned forward on his elbows, staring at nothing in particular. When he finally broke the silence, his voice was almost too quiet to hear. Do you think we were always this way? Or did we become it? Sophie, who was packing away the last of the displayed jewelry under the lockbox, looked up. I don't know, she said. Maybe we just got used to not questioning it. Jason gave a bitter smile. That's worse. Sophie set the case down. I saw how you looked at her when she walked in. You didn't even realize it. I did, Jason replied softly. That's the worst part. I knew it. And I still chose Melissa's reaction over my own judgment. He looked over at her. She made it feel like that was loyalty. Sophie didn't argue. She didn't have to. The sound of Marcus locking the front doors again echoed behind them, a final punctuation mark on the longest shift of their lives. Across the city, Evelyn and David were reviewing press strategy. By now, the internal email had gone out to all 248 Regal Attire locations. Evelyn's inbox had exploded with everything from stunned apologies to cautious questions. Some praised her. Others panicked. A few, predictably, protested. She wasn't concerned with the noise. Her focus was the brand. This can't just be a moment, she told David, scrolling through the emails. It has to become memory. And then practice. We're not just cleaning up a store. We're correcting a culture. David nodded. I've already sent the footage to compliance. Legal has reviewed your confrontation with Melissa and confirmed your authority to handle terminations on site. Evelyn nodded. Good. Make sure the footage is archived. I want it to be part of every new manager's onboarding from now on. She looked out the conference room window, watching the city lights flicker like tiny flames beneath the dusk sky. "I'm not going to fire people for getting it wrong," she said. "I'm going to fire them for choosing to stay wrong." Back at the boutique, Marcus approached Melissa, who still hadn't moved from the lounge. "They're waiting for you outside," he said, not unkindly. "HR's sending a car." Melissa stood slowly. "I thought I was invincible here." Marcus didn't respond. She didn't expect him to. As she passed Jason and Sophie, she paused, her voice small. "I didn't mean for this to happen." Sophie looked at her, her voice surprisingly strong. "That's what people always say after it happens." Melissa's eyes welled slightly. But the moment passed quickly. She straightened her back, her heels clicking one last time across the floor as she exited through the front door. She didn't look back. Sophie glanced at Jason. "Think she'll try to sue?" Jason shrugged. "Won't matter. Evelyn has receipts." "Literally." They both chuckled softly. Not with joy. With disbelief at how fast the mighty had fallen, and how blind they'd all been. The next morning, a short video was posted to Regal Attire's social platforms. A simple clip. No dramatic music. Just Evelyn Carter, standing in front of a neutral backdrop. "I walked into my own store and wasn't recognized," she said. "But that's not the problem. The problem is how easily I was dismissed." The camera lingered on her face as she continued. "This isn't about one manager, or one boutique. It's about all the places where we mistake style for superiority. And I promise you, that stops here." The video ended with the words, "Integrity wears every color. Evelyn Carter, CEO." The post exploded. Within hours, it was trending across social media platforms. News outlets picked up the story. Influencers reshared it. Some applauded the courage. Others questioned the timing. But the message, undeniable. Evelyn Carter wasn't just running a fashion empire. She was changing what it meant to belong in one. Within 48 hours of the video going live, Regal Attire's online traffic surged by 320%. Not because of a sale. Not because of a celebrity collaboration. But because a CEO had walked into her own store and was humiliated, and refused to stay silent about it. And the world responded. TikTok videos began popping up of everyday women sharing their own stories of discrimination in luxury stores. The hashtag #RecognizeReal trended globally, and within days, major fashion publications were calling Evelyn's move a masterclass in corporate integrity. Yet inside Regal Attire headquarters, not everyone saw it that way. At a private executive roundtable, a few board members voiced their discomfort with the fallout. "This is risky," said Leonard Strauss, CFO. "The story makes us look fractured." "We are fractured," Evelyn responded coolly. "This didn't create the problem, it revealed it." A marketing VP cleared her throat. "We've received dozens of emails from high-value clients who feel alienated." Evelyn folded her hands. "If they feel alienated by respect, then they're welcome to shop elsewhere." Silence. Not one executive dared to challenge her after that. Later that afternoon, Evelyn paid an unannounced visit to the boutique. The doors were still closed to the public, but inside, the transformation had begun. Sophie was now acting floor supervisor, and she was directing a team of new hires, diverse, curious, eager to learn. The boutique had been rearranged to feel warmer, more open. The mirrored panels that once loomed like judgmental guardians had been replaced with soft lighting and inclusive campaign visuals, including one of Evelyn herself wearing the same black silk dress. Sophie spotted her and rushed over. "Miss Carter," she said nervously, "I didn't expect." "I'm not here to inspect," Evelyn said, smiling. "I'm here to observe." She moved slowly through the space, nodding as she watched a trainee politely assist a middle-aged woman with a walker. Another helped a teenage girl pick out a graduation dress. The vibe had changed. Not just the aesthetics. The energy. Feels different already, Evelyn said. Sophie beamed. I never thought I'd be given a second chance. But I won't waste it. Evelyn studied her. You shouldn't. Because this is more than a job now. It's a mission. As Evelyn turned to leave, she noticed Marcus standing quietly near the exit, just like before. But this time, he gave her a respectful nod, and she returned it with genuine warmth. Just outside, a small group of young women stood staring at the storefront, whispering excitedly. One of them recognized Evelyn and hesitantly approached. Excuse me, are you her? The CEO. Evelyn smiled. I am. The girl's eyes widened. You changed everything. My mom cried when she saw the video. Said you looked like her. That struck Evelyn deeper than she expected. She gently rested a hand on the girl's shoulder. I didn't change everything, she said softly. I just reminded people of what should have never been forgotten. As the girls rushed to take selfies with her, Evelyn let herself smile wider than she had in weeks. This wasn't about viral moments. It was about reclaiming space. About legacy. And speaking of legacy. Later that night, Evelyn sat in her study, looking at an old photograph, her mother at a sewing machine in their tiny Chicago apartment, fabric scraps everywhere, her eyes filled with quiet fire. Her mother used to say, the world may try to measure you by your shoes, Evelyn, but never let them forget who owns the floor. Evelyn exhaled, set the photo down, and picked up her phone. David, she said when he answered. Next quarter, I want all store staff, from corporate to boutique, to undergo blind shopper training. We'll partner with consultants. Get mystery clients. Real tests. Understood, he said. Anything else? She paused. Yeah. I want one more press release. This time, with a quote. She leaned back in her chair and said it aloud, already picturing it printed across screens, etched into memory. Power doesn't need to be seen to exist. But when it speaks, let the world listen. 1 week later, the boutique reopened with a new name emblazoned in brushed gold above its sleek glass doors. E. Carter, the flagship experience. Gone was the cold, aloof atmosphere of polished exclusivity. In its place stood warmth, sophistication, and a powerful message in every detail, from mannequins styled across diverse body types, to handwritten notes beside displays that read, "Elegance begins with how we treat each other." Opening day drew a crowd. Not of the elite whispering behind designer sunglasses, but of families, students, everyday people drawn by the story that had taken the world by storm. Reporters stood outside, quietly respectful. Social media influencers posted live as customers entered, some buying, some just curious, but all welcomed. And at the center of it all stood Evelyn Carter, composed and radiant, dressed not in black silk but in a crisp white blouse and her favorite old sneakers, cleaned but still carrying their history. Her presence said everything the walls couldn't: dignity doesn't come with a receipt. Inside, Sophie directed the floor team with confidence, her voice no longer hesitant. Jason, still under probationary status, stood at the back arranging a window display. He had returned, but on Evelyn's terms. Humble, quiet, listening. Even Marcus was back, but this time not as security. Evelyn had invited him to be the community liaison for the store's new inclusivity outreach, a program that would mentor young people in retail professionalism and leadership. Melissa, on the other hand, had been quiet since her dismissal. Some tabloids hinted she was shopping a redemption interview, others said she'd left town. Evelyn didn't concern herself with that. Action spoke louder than apologies. And consequences echoed. Just after noon, Evelyn stepped outside to greet the growing crowd. Flashbulbs popped. A young girl handed her a rose. A local journalist asked, "Miss Carter, what made you return to the boutique that tried to humiliate you?" Evelyn smiled gently. Because it's not just about how you enter a room, she said. It's about how you leave it, and what you leave behind. A pause. Cameras clicked. She continued. People often forget that exclusion is learned. So is inclusion. If I had walked away quietly, the lesson would have been missed. But if I stayed? If I stood up, not just for myself, but for everyone who's ever been judged before they were heard, then maybe we start rewriting the rules. She turned toward the building behind her. This space was once a gatekeeping fortress. Now it's a mirror. And everyone deserves to see themselves reflected in it. Applause broke out, soft at first, then building. Not thunderous, but honest. From those who knew this wasn't about fashion, it was about fairness. As the sun dipped lower and the crowd slowly dispersed, Evelyn returned to her office above the boutique, the new command center of Carter's transformation movement. David was waiting with updates, positive earnings forecasts, thousands of new loyalty sign-ups, even a letter of commendation from the mayor. But Evelyn paused at one envelope, handwritten, no return address. She opened it carefully. Inside was a short note. I watched you walk in that day, and I stayed silent. I was afraid. But I'm not anymore. Thank you for showing me how to walk with my head high. SD. Evelyn smiled softly. It wasn't about punishing the past. It was about lighting the path forward. And as night fell over Seattle, the boutique's windows glowed like beacons, no longer a symbol of exclusion, but of transformation. Not every lesson needs to be loud. But the quiet ones? They echo forever. This was the story of Evelyn Carter, a woman who walked into a storm of prejudice and walked out with a legacy. Her story reminds us, you can't control how others see you. But you can always control what you stand for. Let us know what part of this story moved you the most. And if you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or overlooked, we want to hear your story too. Subscribe to True Echo for more powerful stories that deserve to be heard. Comment below. Share this video. Because every time truth is echoed, change begins.